I'm gonna get in the boat if they stay there, mate.
How do you dive? I can't remember.
Surprise!
Oh my god.
Right, come over to me. Hit me up.
Is PUBG having a resurgence, a bit of a comeback? Well, you may have noticed that I've been playing the game more the last few weeks as I try to slowly get back into playing the game and increase my skill level. I have to admit that I'm enjoying going back to games after some time away, just to see how much they've changed and improved over time. And PUBG is one of those games that I've noticed huge improvements with recently. Let's not pretend though, while the game now has 4 maps and plenty of new weapons, the core game is very much the same, and I think that's a good thing. One of the best things about PUBG originally was that it offered up a more skill-based experience, and although I have really enjoyed playing Firestorm and Apex, I have to admit that it's quite rewarding and at the same time challenging to jump back into PUBG. But let's start with some of the bad things first before I start singing PUBG's praises. There are still plenty of things that seemingly haven't been addressed since PUBG's launch, which I would love to see improved. First of all, the audio balance is still a bit wonky. Weapon sounds and vehicle audio, especially when inside, is incredibly loud. I feel like they need a little bit more customization in the options when it comes to audio levels, but I feel as though that's been something that players have wanted more control over for as long as I can remember, and yet here we are still. I just tend to press Ctrl and M and mute whenever I'm driving a vehicle. Also, the red zone. How is that still a thing? Is there anyone that really thinks it adds anything to the experience? I'm sure there might be, but I personally just don't see any real improvements to gameplay having it there. When you have a feature in a game, you have to look at it and say, does this really improve any aspect of gameplay? Does it force players into doing something that you want them to do? Well, other than ruining someone's game or forcing them to back away into a building, I'm not really sure that it achieves anything fun. I'd not be sad to see it removed. There also seems to be an issue with players with high pings in the game. I've come across a few laggy players, for sure, but I also follow a lot of PUBG players, and I see that this is something that a lot of them point out. Players apparently use VPNs to play on different regions, as well as players with very high pings playing on European servers. This of course leads to issues with hit registration and dying behind cover. Not really sure how you can fix that other than looking into the reason that players are doing this in the first place. That being said, there still seems to be a big issue with cheaters. I know PUBG Corp are doing what they can to improve the anti-cheat and they're banning a lot of players regularly, but as you can imagine, cheaters are always going to be one step ahead and find a way to cheat, and the longer the game is out, the more ways they can find to circumvent the system. And as a whole, I think it's the PC platform that suffers. A reported 13 million PUBG accounts have been banned since mid-2017. That's a crazy amount of accounts. In fact, that's more accounts banned for cheating than some games have users, full stop. Take it from someone who played Counter-Strike since they were 12 years old, they will always be cheating on the PC platform when it comes to competitive shooters. You can reduce it, you can ban people, but sadly, there will never be an anti-cheat that people can't eventually get around. But PUBG Corp did say that they've recently outlined an anti-cheat program that they're working on, but how effective it will be long term remains to be seen. Okay, so that's the bad stuff out of the way, but now let's focus on the good stuff. Bit of positivity. First of all, there are quite a few quality of life changes in the game now, with more being added all of the time. One of those is the ability to pick what fire selection weapons are going to be when you first pick them up. Can you believe it? Now this has been in the game a while now, but it's something that used to frustrate the life out of me. Performance also really good now. I'm not going to say it's perfect, you will still get frame drops when you look into busy areas or cities, but for the most part, if you've got a decent rig, I think this game runs very well nowadays, and the animations especially feel a lot smoother. When you jump out of the plane, the animation plays far smoother than it ever did. And then the parachuting controls have been refined, as well as dropping, and the landing is far cleaner than it was a year ago. You can even cut your chute early if you're feeling a bit risky. In the past 12 months, I think there was a feeling, especially on PC, that PUBG was a dying game. Fortnite came out and just rode the wave of success for so long, and even still now, the player numbers for Fortnite are incredible. PUBG was at 3 million concurrent players at one point though, but the player base slowly shrank day by day to a point where it was down to a few hundred thousands. But let's put that into perspective though. The game is still usually in the top 3 on Steam, surrounded by other heavy hitting games like CSGO and Dota 2. A few 100,000 players is hardly a small number. It's a big game, and while Fortnite has been steamrolling along, PUBG has actually quietly been holding its own and putting itself into arguably the best state the game has ever been in. And I recently made a video talking about how much the game has improved over the past year. It now has a selection of maps for people to play and tons of new weapons. And then you've got the Survivor Pass, which rewards players for reaching milestones, and you've got weapon mastery and ranks that allow you to level up each of your weapons. And let's not forget about the mobile game either. That is absolutely massive. And I think it's quite interesting going back and discussing this because I played a lot of Apex since it launched, and I remember playing a lot of Blackout too when that first released. And I recently went back to play Blackout after not doing it for around 7 months, and yet through all of Fortnite's success, Apex launch, and a powerhouse of a franchise like COD releasing their own BR mode, PUBG is still alive and kicking. And it's becoming increasingly popular again on YouTube and Twitch. So why is that? Well, I think PUBG offers something, especially on PC, that all of those other games that I just mentioned don't. It's a far more tactical and realistic game, and the skill curve is definitely there. I'm not sure if realistic is the right term though, perhaps grounded in reality would be better, but you get the point. Apex and Blackout are fast paced and a bit wild. Fortnite on the other hand, well, Fortnite is Fortnite. The only real competitor to PUBG in terms of realism, I'd say, is Firestorm, which is Battlefield 5's take on BR, but let's face it, until that game mode goes free to play, it just simply cannot compete, and even then, PUBG has spent a long time refining its game, building up its player base, and anyone coming to the party now has a long way to go before they can catch up. And I'm beginning to see PUBG as the Counter-Strike of Battle Royale games. It will always be there and it will always be respected. Now, one of the things that inspired me to make this video was that I saw a post recently from PUBG Corp talking about some changes and additions they're planning for the console version of PUBG. I played it when it first came out on Xbox and it wasn't very good. I've not played it since. But one of the big takeaways of the article was auto-equip of attachments. Described as a quality of life change, the article talks about how in PUBG speed is of the essence, but they want to also try and keep the realistic gameplay that PUBG is known for. So the idea of this feature is that attachments would be auto-equipped to your weapon when you pick them up to save time in your inventory. And when you drop a weapon on the ground, the attachments would automatically be put back into your inventory. This is something that you can also disable if you would like to. And I'd like to reiterate that it seems at the moment this is something that will only be available for consoles, and it's something that PUBG Mobile does exceptionally well. But of course, it definitely makes sense for the mobile version of the game with the controls on offer there. But I wonder how PC players would feel if something like this was to make its way onto that platform. I'd love to see auto pickup of attachments on PC, but I'd also love to have the option to turn them off too. PUBG Corp studio director Brian Corrigan recently said that there are a lot of ways that they could change the game to make it more approachable, but that's not the story we want to tell, and it's just not the soul of the game. We look at PUBG as sometimes unforgiving, hard but not hardcore, with a weird mix of silly and strange things thrown in to keep it interesting. And I think this is true for the PC version of the game too. I don't think they would want to dumb it down on PC for want of a better term, but on console, because of the nature of looting and not being able to tab drag really quickly, perhaps an auto weapon attachment would make more sense. That being said, would it really reduce the hardcore nature of the game that much? Games like Apex are much faster paced, but it's such a nice quality of life improvement to have if your attachments auto-equip. As I said, I'd love to see it on PC, but I imagine a lot of the die-hard PUBG players would rather that feature stayed on console. So wrapping things up, in conclusion, I suppose maybe it was unfair of me to say that PUBG is having a resurgence or on a comeback, because as I mentioned earlier, it's actually always been slowly steaming along with all of these big hitters having their moments in the limelight. PUBG, it might not be at the highs that it once was with the concurrent of 3 million players per day, but it doesn't need to be that anymore. I think it's comfortable where it is, and with a strong competitive scene pushing it along and giving players a reason to play, it's interesting to see how lots of people are jumping back in on this experience that we loved so much. Let me finish by saying though, if there was one thing that I would love to see improved in PUBG to really seal the deal for me, it would be to just make the movement a little bit smoother. Because when you play games like Apex and Blackout and you come back to PUBG, it can sometimes feel a bit archaic. Some say that's the style of the game, but I do think it would be improved if movement was a bit smoother. With that said, that's where I'm going to leave it today, guys. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on PUBG down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.